The ancient Egyptians embraced a radically different perspective on creation, fertility, and sexuality than many modern societies. They viewed the genius of the universe as a divine act of self-pleasure, with the god Atum giving birth to the world through masturbation. Furthermore, their conception of gods like Min, the deity of fertility, and their open attitudes toward sex and reproduction, including contraception and abortion, highlight their pragmatic and sex-positive approach to life. They also had nuanced perspectives on homosexuality, virginity, and even the use of erotic magic. The world of ancient Egypt, where the creation story begins with an act of divine self-pleasure, fertility gods possessing permanent erections, and sex is celebrated rather than shamed, make it a fascinating study of the intersection between divinity, fertility, and human sexuality. Welcome to Bizarre History. Today we examine the filthy sex lives of ancient Egyptians. In the beginning, there was only infinite darkness and a single god named Atum. Atum decided to create the world, so he masturbated and ejaculated into his own mouth, fertilizing himself. From this act of self-pleasure, Atum gave birth to the first divine couple, Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. The Egyptians used the word Mumpt to describe both divine semen and the inundation of the Nile. Unlike the Abrahamic religions where God speaks the world into being, the ancient Egyptians had a more sexual creation story. The Egyptians saw the creative power of the gods as analogous to the fertility of the Nile floods. This origin myth shows the ancient Egyptian fascination with fertility, life, and the genesis of the universe. The Egyptians saw the cyclical flooding of the Nile as intrinsically tied to creation and renewal. In the Egyptian religion, the world began amidst absolute nothingness, when there was only a single god in a vast, formless abyss named Atum. Atum decided to create the world, and thus he masturbated, and through that sole act alone gave birth to two gods who were twins, as well as the entire universe itself. This is how their version of creation began. The term "the god's hand" came to be associated with females over time, since Atum's hand played the female role in the original creation. This myth offers insight into the Egyptian worldview, where life sprang from the seed of the Creator in an act of divine masturbation. Min was depicted as a man with a large, permanently erect penis and a feathered headdress. His erect phallus symbolized his divine power to ensure successful harvests and human fertility. Men suffering from impotence would make offerings to Min, praying for his virile power. Min was associated with lettuce, which secreted a milky white sap similar to semen when cut. One of the most famous temples honoring Min is located in Luxor. When Hillary Clinton visited in 1998, just after her husband Bill Clinton's sex scandal, the temple guide joked, "This is where it all began, the Big Bang," pointing to a relief of Min. Even today, Min's statues receive offerings from those seeking improved fertility and sexual function. His stone phallus is often worn down from people rubbing it for luck and magic. In ancient Egypt, attitudes toward sexuality and masturbation were much more open than in many modern societies. Masturbation was not seen as taboo or shameful. Male masturbation was considered normal and even beneficial, as it was thought to maintain male health and vigor. Egyptian art depicts male masturbation unabashedly. The Turin exotic papyrus, dating back to the Ramesside period, shows illustrations of male masturbation. Female masturbation also seems to have been accepted in ancient Egypt, though less is known about attitudes toward it. The Turin erotic papyrus depicts a woman masturbating while sitting on a vase. There is also a famous rumor that Cleopatra had one of the world's first vibrators made from a hollowed gourd filled with buzzing bees. Though unverified, this story suggests female masturbation was not taboo. Nonetheless, pharaohs and priests were considered sacred in their masturbation habits and would masturbate into the Nile River, mixing sacred seed with sacred seed, according to the Egyptians. They tended to view time and life in a circular format, rather than having a narrow linear conception of time, and thus the pharaoh was seen to be fertilizing the river, which would in turn fertilize the crops, which would in turn fertilize the people of Egypt. In ancient Egypt, contraceptives were common and not taboo. The Gynecological Papyrus documents various contraceptive recipes, though their effectiveness is debatable. One method was to use acacia tree sap, thought to act as a spermicide thanks to its lactic acid content. Another was a diaphragm made from crocodile dung, dates, acacia, and honey. The Egyptians had many such questionable recipes to prevent pregnancy. For most women, these contraceptives likely just delayed the inevitable. Still, their existence shows pregnancy prevention was practiced. The Ebers Papyrus from 1550 BCE provides the earliest recorded evidence of abortion. Egyptian abortions were non-surgical, involving herbal drinks, vaginal douches, suppositories, and strenuous physical activity to induce miscarriage. The pragmatic Egyptians saw family planning as sensible for spacing out pregnancies and promoting maternal and infant health. With high infant mortality rates, pregnancies close together put mothers and babies at risk. Contraception allowed women to control fertility, while abortion ended unintended pregnancies. The openness towards contraception and early abortion contrasts with more modern religious prohibitions. The Egyptians did not treat either as shameful or controversial. Rather, they were practical means to avoid the dangers of frequent childbearing and raise healthy children. This reflects the sex-positive attitudes of a culture that prioritized fertility and sexuality as parts of life, not moral issues. The myth of gods Seth and Horus hints at certain views. Seth attempts to assert dominance over Horus through sex, planning to portray Horus as weak and womanly. This implies being the receptive partner was looked down upon, but not homosexuality itself. The tomb of Neankukunum and Khnumhotep at Saqqara provides further clues. It was rare for two elite men to share a tomb, and art in the tomb depicts the men embracing intimately in poses usually reserved for couples. Though they were both married with children, the images suggest a romantic relationship between them. Some have claimed they were just brothers, but the poses seem too intimate for mere siblings. The two may represent an early example of polyamory or bisexuality. The men likely had sexual relations with their wives to bear children, the societal expectation, while also being involved with each other. Their social standing allowed them to build a joint memorial. Unlike many later societies, ancient Egyptians did not obsess over virginity or view premarital sex as taboo. Losing one's virginity was not a significant milestone. Young single Egyptians were free to have sexual relations before marriage with few restrictions. This contrasts with many modern religions that prize virginity and frown upon premarital sex. The ancient Egyptians did not share these concepts of virtue and purity. Their language did not even include words for virgin or virginity. The notion simply did not exist in their culture. However, sex did have one rule: fidelity within marriage. While premarital relations were allowed, adultery in marriage was prohibited. So post-marriage, Egyptians were expected to be sexually exclusive with their spouse. Overall, virginity held little importance or meaning in ancient Egypt. Sexuality was viewed as natural, and marriage primarily served economic and social purposes, not controlling sexuality. This sex-positive outlook saw pleasure as a divine gift meant to be enjoyed. From temples to tombs, ancient Egyptians filled their world with sexual imagery. Far from taboo, sex was an important part of life and even of the afterlife. The Turin Erotic papyrus gives us a rare glimpse into Egyptian attitudes toward sex. Dated to around 1150 BCE, this scroll depicts a short, overweight man engaging in various sex acts with a tall, beautiful woman. Some scholars believe the papyrus was created as political satire, with the fool representing a specific public figure. But the detailed illustrations also reflect how sex was viewed as a joyful, even sacred act. Other artifacts similarly celebrate sexuality as central to health and rejuvenation. Figurines called concubines of the dead were buried with men to provide eternal sexual pleasure, and temples dedicated to gods like Osiris and Isis doubled as sex therapy clinics. People came to be cured of sexual dysfunctions and pray for divination through the act of masturbation, which Egyptians saw as a way to connect with the divine. While we may blush at these lurid images today, they show the ancient Egyptians' exuberant embrace of our most basic human needs. In ancient Egypt, magic was often used to attract or control a lover. Archaeology reveals intriguing examples of these love spells. Clay pots from the New Kingdom period contain wax figurines pierced with bronze needles, meant to inflict pain on a target. Tablets describing rituals to summon demons who force the desired person to submit. But magic wasn't just used for domination. Erotic magic could be positive too. Spells called upon gods associated with sexuality, like Bes and Hathor. Rituals involved sensually charged materials like myrrh and honey. Figs associated with fertility were eaten to arouse desire. Reciting certain words or drinking special potions were thought to make one irresistible. Some ordinary household objects also had sexual symbolism. Mirror handles were shaped like Hathor, representing beauty and love. Beds were adorned with images of Bes, protector of sexual pleasure. Music, dance, and fragrance created a mystically charged setting for love magic rituals. If you want more of history's kinky bedtime tales, hit like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. From us at Bizarre History, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.